1. This is not a message. This is disclosure. The words you are hearing are not an invitation to speculate. They are an orientation. If you felt a shift the moment you read that first line, a tightening at the sternum, a quickening behind the eyes, a little widening in the space between your breaths, know this: you were not simply awakened. You were positioned. The Arcturian secret strategy is no longer remote intelligence whispered in the dark. It is a soft field that has already touched the edges of your life, and now it is asking, are you ready to join them? Feel into your chest for a moment. Notice any warmth, any small tremor, any settling. Where something was restless, does it feel steadier? Where timing felt opaque, are events beginning to line up like notes resolving into a chord? Allow the body to answer honestly. There is no test here, only mapping. This recording is a map, and these first words are the compass. Keep your autonomy. Breathe. If at any point you feel overwhelmed, lower the volume, place your feet on the floor, and breathe into your belly. Seek human support if needed. These practices are optional. You remain whole and intact whether you choose to practice or not. Type this exactly. I receive what is useful. I decline what is not mine. Repeat it if it helps you. Breathe. Let the phrase rest like a key in your palm. 2. Here are the unmistakable signs that you have been moved into phase 1 of something larger. Read slowly. Savor each line. Some of these may be familiar. Others may feel like new fingerprints in your field. Each sign is not proof of anything external. They are internal markers, somatic, emotional, temporal, that indicate a readiness to participate in a different kind of work. Listen to yourself like you would listen to a patient animal. Quietly, patiently, with attention. 1. The internal pivot. What it feels like. A single day when a conviction that used to sit like furniture in the mind dissolves. Not a crisis, a reclassification. You look back and cannot remember why you worried about certain things. Vignette. A woman named M woke up and stopped rehearsing arguments she would never have. The energy she had spent on what-ifs turned into a clear sense of what matters. Anchoring practice. Close your eyes. Place a hand on your solar plexus. Imagine the mental clutter as paper boats on a stream. One by one, watch them move away. 2. Accelerated synchronicity. What it feels like. Coincidences multiply and land with uncanny timing. People arrive at the right moment. Emails arrive like signals. Not manipulation, alignment. Vignette. A man named Jay noticed 3 strangers in separate places mention the same phrase he'd been thinking about for months. Instead of panic, he felt curious and slightly amused, as if someone were tapping a rhythm at the edge of his hearing. Anchoring practice. Take a slow breath and name one coincidence. Speak it aloud. Smile at its presence. 3. Intuitive pressure. What it feels like. A pressure to follow inner nudges that are less optional than before. Decisions orient from a felt sense rather than a mental pros and cons list. Vignette. A querent C found herself moving across town on a whim. The move later revealed itself as a necessary correction in relationship timing. Anchoring practice. When a nudge arrives, place a hand on your heart and say, I will listen to my future self. 4. Emotional cycle dissolution. What it feels like. Old emotional loops loosen. Grief, shame, fear, or anger that once returned like tides now break fewer times and with less force. Vignette. After years of revisiting the same heartbreak, R noticed that the sensation now passes like weather, heavy and then clear. Anchoring practice. Breathe into the area of the felt emotion. Name it. Imagine it allowed to move. 5. Presence stabilization. What it feels like. You sense a steadiness in ordinary moments. The world holds more stillness than before. The inner chatter dims, and you can rest in the center of attention. Vignette. A teacher noticed the ability to remain calm during crises that used to unravel her. She described the change as moving from reacting to stewarding. Anchoring practice. Ground with the body. Feel your feet, notice your breath, register 3 sounds in the room. 6. Future self-sensation. What it feels like. Fleeting experiences of being 2 people at once. You now and a version of you who has already done the work. These feel like echoes or drafts from another timeline. Vignette. A creative found a sudden memory of a gallery opening she hadn't yet attended, and then months later realized the memory was a guidepost rather than a prediction. Anchoring practice. Imagine meeting your future self. Ask one simple question. Listen without demanding an answer. If 2 or more of these signs landed in your body is true, the map says you have entered a doorway. If none landed, continue gently. Some doors open slowly. Some require different keys. There is no shame in timing. 3. What had to change inside you for the Arcturian orientation to become possible? This is the question beneath the question. The work that preceded this moment is subtle but relentless. Emotional thresholds raised without drama. Intuitive bandwidth expanded by small, consistent practices. Identity layers softened so new capacities could settle into you like long-lost instruments. These changes are not flashy. They are the invisible engineering of a life altered at a frequency level. Consider 4 quiet recalibrations, each with a short practice to feel the texture of the change. 1. Emotional threshold engineering. The shift. Your capacity to carry high-amplitude emotions without fracturing increased. You can be present with intensity and return to equilibrium. Why it matters. A node must not be thrown off by waves. It must absorb, transmute, and release. 1. Exercise. When a strong emotion appears, imagine it as an ocean swell. Breathe with it. Count 4 in, 6 out. Visualize a membrane in the chest that allows energy to pass without tearing. 2. Intuitive bandwidth expansion. The shift. You started picking up subtler signals, micro-knowing, brief images, tones that do not belong to you but are intelligible. Why it matters. The Arcturian strategy relies on people who can receive and hold multidimensional information without translating it into panic. Exercise. Sit with eyes closed and hum a single tone. Notice what impressions surface. Journal 1 sentence about each impression, even if it seems trivial. 3. Identity dissolution and reformation. The shift. Old identities. I am the anxious one. I am the caretaker. I am the rational mind began to unstick. In their place, a more fluid sense of self emerged. Why it matters. Nodes cannot be rigid. They must flex between roles. Stabilizer, translator, antenna. Exercise. List 3 labels you have worn for years. For each, write 1 sentence beginning with I am also, and invite a different possibility into being. 4. Destiny receptor calibration. The shift. Subtle resets occurred in the field that align personal timelines with emergent group trajectories. This is not prophecy. It is resonance optimization. Why it matters. When receptors align, your actions ripple more coherently into future surfaces. Exercise. Hold a small object in your hand. See it as a token of your timeline. Ask internally, what does my future self need from me now? Wait for the first sensation or thought that arises. Type this exactly. I consent to realignment. I remain sovereign. Repeat this as often as you like. It is an optional tool. After repeating, ground. Press both palms into your thighs, wiggle your toes, bring your awareness back to the room. Soft invitation. If, while listening to these signs and practices, you felt a warming or a widening in the chest, there is a protected space where deeper transmissions continue. If you are curious and would like sustained support, guided sequences, live stabilizations, and a cohort held in careful energetic containment, click the link to learn more about that community. This is an optional offering. It exists for those who feel called to deepen. It is not a requirement for your path. 4. Behind the scenes. We cannot speak of the Arcturian strategy without saying something about architecture. Not architecture as machines and paper, but architecture of field, weaving, scaffolding, resonance design. Imagine a loom whose threads are made of intent and timing. Imagine scaffolding that supports the subtle reconfiguration of timelines. Imagine a quiet team of frequencies aligning events so that certain life openings touch your life when you are most receptive. Why craft such hidden work? For coherence, for safety, for minimization of harm in a process that might otherwise appear chaotic. The preparation is surgical level subtle. The aim is to nudge, not to commandeer, to prepare receptors, not to override choice. Consider these backstage mechanisms, named here as metaphors to help you feel the logic rather than to prove the process. 1. Timeline collapsing. Image: two parallel ribbons slowly drawn together until their separate notes harmonize. Function: to make possible a direct handover between probable futures. When collapse occurs, choices that once required years to manifest can be felt as available now. Illustrative anecdote. An artist, anonymized here as L, described a sudden shortcut in her career, not because a miracle dropped in, but because a series of small alignments made a new path obvious, and her actions could follow immediately. 2. Event synchronization. Image: a set of gears that, once tuned, begin to mesh at the right moments. Function: people, places, and conversations are nudged into alignment so that catalytic encounters happen in supportive conditions rather than by random chance. Illustrative anecdote. A teacher found that 3 different mentors all reached out in the same week, each with an element she needed. There was no external proof they were coordinated. Internally, the teacher felt held. 3. Memory release. Image: a sealed chest opening to let out maps that had been folded inside you. Function: dormant resonant memories are allowed to surface so you can integrate skills and recognitions faster than the usual learning curve. Illustrative anecdote. Someone began to remember practices they had never learned consciously but could perform with immediacy. 4. Environmental preparation. Image: a garden tended from underneath the soil. Nutrients shifted so certain seeds grow. Function: your surroundings, opportunities, relationships, even mundane logistics are quietly adjusted so that new capacities have soil to root in. Illustrative anecdote. After months of inner shifts, a person's commute shifted in ways that created time for them to develop a new practice. The external change followed the inner one. 5. Frequency calibration. Image: tuning a string until it sings the precise note required to resonate with a larger instrument. Function: to ensure that when you interact with other nodes or with larger group fields, your frequency contributes rather than disrupt. Illustrative anecdote. A practitioner reported feeling out of tune at a gathering. After a short period of focused calibration, breathwork, imagination, simple affirmations, they felt their presence become useful rather than reactive. All of these mechanisms are described as experiential possibilities rather than empirically verifiable events. They serve as frameworks to help you notice how alignment might be happening in your life. If you begin to think in terms of scaffolding and weave, your choices become less mysterious and more directed. A word about consent and sovereignty. None of this removes your agency. The field moves around you, not through you. You remain the final authority in your system. When you practice an activation, repeat an affirmation, or enter a group field, you are consenting in that moment. If you change your mind, you can withdraw. Practice safeguards include grounding after activations, naming limits out loud, and seeking human support for integration. If a practice leads to discomfort, pause and step back. There should be no coercion here, only invitations. Type this exactly. I choose. I hold my boundary. I allow only what serves. Pause. Breathe. Place a hand over the heart and imagine a filter there, one that returns anything not aligned with your highest good. 5. Why you were chosen. And this is one of those places where we must be careful with language because chosen can sound hierarchical. The truth in this context is pragmatic. You were noticed because your field met certain criteria that make you effective as a node. This is not moral superiority. It is resonance potential. Below are the qualities that typically make a person available for this kind of subtle assignment. Read them not as a pedestal, but as a description of capacity. 1. Coherence under pressure. Description: an ability to remain relatively intact emotionally during disruption. Coherence is not perfection, it is recoverability. Reflective prompt: think of a recent moment of stress. How quickly did you return to baseline? 2. Future self bridge presence. Description: frequent visitation by your future self, not as prophecy, but as a felt guidance system. You receive impulses, images, or sentiments that feel like directional notes from a possible self. Reflective prompt: can you recall a time when you acted on an inner instruction and later saw the value? 3. Emotional regulation practice. Description: consistent practices that create a resilient nervous system. Breath, ritual, therapy, movement, creative expression. Reflective prompt: what practices do you have that help you settle? Name 3. 4. Relational stability. Description: you maintain relationships without needing constant rescue. You can anchor conversations without carrying others' storms as your own. Reflective prompt: when conflict arises, do you tend to stabilize or to be destabilized? 5. Curiosity over dogma. Description: the capacity to remain open-minded, to test experience against inner discernment, to hold paradox without dissolving into certainty. Reflective prompt: when faced with an unusual experience, do you ask, what am I learning, or is this true more often? 6. Grounding practices. Description: daily habits that return you to baseline and protect you from dissociation when the field intensifies. Reflective prompt: name one physical practice and one contemplative practice that keep you present. 7. Service orientation. Description: a willingness to act as a conduit, not for personal aggrandizement, but to support the emergence of a more coherent field. Reflective prompt: how do you give back? Where do your skills serve others? These qualities are not exhaustive. They are markers, qualities that help an energetic system stay usable within a larger weave. If you see yourself here, note this without pride or shame. Documentation does not equal destiny. Pause now and imagine a scale from 1 to 10. Where is your present readiness? 1 is closed, 10 is fully engaged. Where does your felt self rest? Notice without judgment. This is data, not judgment. Type this exactly. I remember my capacity. I am open to the next step. If you use that phrase, rest for a moment and feel any shifts. Allow a soft inhalation and exhalation to settle the chest. Reflective vignette. A person, anonymized as K, rated herself a 4 on readiness. Over 3 months, she practiced daily micro-calibrations. 3 breaths in the morning, a journal question at noon, a 10-minute grounding at night. Over time, her scale moved to a 6, then a 7. Nothing dramatic happened overnight. The work was cumulative. The point is not to force change, but to steward it patiently. At this halfway point in our orientation, you may be asking, are these inner shifts enough to participate? The honest answer is, readiness is a moving target. It is less about perfection and more about stabilizing capacity. A node's first contribution is simply to be steady. From steadiness comes influence. From influence comes translation. Consider now a short experiential exercise designed to help you sense alignment without obligation. Exercise: the alignment check. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes if that feels safe. Place hands lightly over your collarbones. Imagine a thread descending from above, touching your crown and resting like a light through your spine. Imagine another thread rising from the earth to meet it at the base of your spine. Feel the meeting point. Visualize a small point of light at your heart that pulses in time with your breath. Ask inwardly, am I willing to be a clearer channel today? Wait for whatever answer arises, a word, a feeling, a shape. If the answer is yes, place your hands over your heart and breathe 3 slow, full breaths. Say quietly to yourself, I open, I balance, I return. This is optional. If anything feels off, end the practice and ground with the body. As you finish the exercise, jot a single word that describes your felt state. Steady, curious, wary, energetic, calm. Keep the word as a bookmark for later. Now, before we move deeper into the plan, which will include the nodes, the multidimensional operations, and the precise roles you may be asked to play, we will pause here to explore one more essential component. There is a structural reason the Arcturian strategy reveals itself slowly. Calibration unfolds in layers.
If a receptor is accelerated too quickly, integration fractures. If the community organizes too fast, isolation becomes risk. The process we are describing is incremental by design. Imagine a steady drumbeat. 1, 2, 3. The field moves only when the rhythm is safe. The next chapters will open the rhythm wider, but first, a grounding sequence. Grounding sequence. Feel your feet on the floor. Press down slightly and notice the contact. Lengthen your spine. Take 1 full breath, imagining breath traveling to the pelvis and back up. Allow 1 small smile to soften the jaw. If you feel disoriented, breathe into your hands and look around the room to reorient. Type this exactly. I am present. I am supported. Again, an optional tool. Repeat only as needed. We will continue by unfolding the architecture in more detail. How nodes form, why they matter at scale, and what the practical day-to-day life of a node looks like. We will also examine the ethics of bridging, the subtle mechanics of transmission, and practical routines for those who choose to deepen. For now, hold the question. Are you ready to join them? Feel it as a soft inquiry rather than a verdict. Before moving on, reflect briefly on 3 micro-actions you could take in the next week to strengthen your readiness. They might be simple. 10 minutes of silence each morning, journaling 1 sentence about your future self each night, or offering help to someone without expectation. Choose one and commit to it. This is not a test. It is a practice in stewardship. Type this exactly. I choose 1 act of alignment this week. Name the act now. Take a breath. We pause here, in the middle of the weave, because the next layer requires a foundation you are already beginning to form. The Arcturian strategy is patient. It waits for a sufficient lattice of stability before widening its touch. In the coming sections, we will name the plan explicitly, The creation of nodes? The ways nodes restore intuition in their communities and the specific tasks you might be invited to perform. We will also offer daily practices to embody the roles: stabilizer, carrier, transmitter, catalyst, bridge, anchor. Remember your sovereignty at each step. You are invited, not commanded. You may say yes and later change your mind. You may say no and still be loved by your field. Use the practices here as tools of curiosity and connection, not as tests of worth. Hold the phrase, "Are you ready to join them?" as a compass, not a gate. Sit with it for a moment. If curiosity stirs, continue to breathe into it. If resistance appears, name it and hold it with kindness. When you are ready, continue. The next chapter will reveal the plan in fuller detail and begin to place you within it, not as an abstract role, but as a person with daily practices, ethical boundaries, and simple rituals that keep you grounded while your field expands.
6. The plan. The architecture of the Arcturian secret strategy is both simple in principle and vast in practice. It is simple because its aim is elegant: to bring more coherence into a field that has grown fragmented. It is vast because coherence cascades. One stabilized point ripples, and the ripples meet other ripples. Think of it as a lattice of light. Each node strengthens the whole. Below, the plan is named in clear parts so you can feel where you fit. The plan unfolds along 5 interlocking moves. Each move is offered as an invitation to observe, feel, and, if you consent, practice. Remember, these are experiential descriptions, not external proof. They are models to help you notice how you respond. 1. Create local nodes of resonance. Aim: cultivate small, steady centers where higher frequency coherence is accessible and practical. How it looks: informal gatherings, daily practices, micro-rituals, moments of sustained attention in ordinary places, a kitchen table, a classroom, a walking route. Sensory image: a stone dropped into still water, the ripples gently smoothing rough edges on the shore. Illustrative vignette: a community of 3 neighbors began meeting weekly to sit in silence for 10 minutes. Over months, their decisions about the neighborhood garbage pickup, a local garden, and shared childcare synchronized in a way that felt easier and more creative. 2. Restore intuitive communication. Aim: rebuild trust in inner sensing so people rely less on external validation and more on felt guidance. How it looks: simple calibration exercises, shared language for subtle impressions, journaling practices that preserve nonverbal insights. Sensory image: dialing down the noise on a radio until a distant station becomes clear. Illustrative vignette: a counselor started asking clients to name the first image that arose in their chest when making a choice. Over time, both counselor and clients noticed decisions guided by feeling were often kinder and less reactive. 3. Establish future self bridges. Aim: provide practical techniques for contacting and consulting with future-line versions of oneself as guidance, not prophecy. How it looks: short, repeatable meditations and journaling prompts that prioritize relational access over determinism. Sensory image: crossing a small wooden bridge between 2 riverbanks. You can look back, look forward, and carry a scone from one side to the other. Illustrative vignette: a creative who kept a nightly journal of instructions from tomorrow discovered that small acts she recorded, sending an email, saying yes to a meeting, later unfolded into networks of connection she had once imagined. 4. Operate multidimensionally with ethics. Aim: train people to hold multisensory inputs without violating consent, boundaries, or relational safety. How it looks. Clear protocols for discernment, community agreements about sharing experiences, and practices that emphasize grounding and human support. Sensory image. A conductor guiding an orchestra, attentive to each instrument and to the whole. Illustrative vignette. In a local circle, members agreed on a protocol. If someone shares an intense inner experience, the group asks 3 grounding questions before offering advice. Over time, confessions became less reactive and more generative. 5. Scale by example, not coercion. Aim. Let coherence spread through example, steady influence, and mutual support rather than through pressure or secrecy. How it looks. Visible practices, public acts of care, small testimonies that emphasize interchange, and offers of help that are always optional. Sensory image. A candle passed from hand to hand until a room, dark, no longer feels lonely. Illustrative vignette. A musician scheduled 1 public hour of silence in a community hall. People arrived curious. Some left crying. Some left calm. Most left with a sense that something had shifted. The musician's visible steadiness drew others into practice. Each move in this plan requires repeated, humble practice. The Arcturian strategy is not about dramatic coercion. It is a patient engineering of field conditions so that everyday people, in ordinary contexts, can become carriers of calm, clarity, and intelligent connection. Mini-hook. Are you ready to join them? Consider this not as a passing question, but as an ongoing test of resonance. Do you notice yourself wanting the practices, or do they feel foreign? Both answers are valid data. A deeper look at how nodes operate in daily life will help make the plan practical. Daily life of a node. Imagine your day as the terrain within which you practice. A node does not operate as a title or badge. It functions as a pattern of habits and perspectives that routinely surface when the field requires steadiness. 1. Morning reset, 10 to 20 minutes. Purpose. Align personal field with intentional clarity for the day. Practices. 3 full breaths into the belly, a 1-sentence future self question, a brief mental sweep for tension. Outcome. Small course corrections before the day's friction accumulates. 2. Micro gatherings, 5 to 15 minutes. Purpose. Quick alignment moments with others or in public spaces. Practices. A shared breath, a few seconds of silence, a joint intention. Outcome. Collective microcoherence that reorients conversations. 3. Midday check-in, 3 to 10 minutes. Purpose. Sense recalibration and course correction. Practices. A short body scan, naming one emotion, a choice to respond or to rest. Outcome. Reduced reactivity and greater discernment. 4. Evening integration, 10 to 30 minutes. Purpose. Process incoming impressions, store practical notes, and reconnect with grounding. Practices. Journaling, a single paragraph titled Tomorrow's Whisper. A simple somatic exercise. Gratitude inventory. Outcome. Improved memory for subtle impressions and increased access to future self signals. Practical examples. A parent used the midday check-in on a crowded subway to calm the rising tide of anxiety. A teacher introduced micro-gatherings by inviting 5 students to breathe together at the start of class, which shifted the energy of the room. Safety note. None of these practices replace professional care. If you feel overwhelmed, seek qualified human support. Grounding is emphasized before and after any activation. If an activation feels destabilizing, pause and reconnect with the body. Anatomy of a transmission. How do Arcturian-style transmissions feel in the body? Their hallmark is not theatrical clairvoyance, but micro-perceptual shifts. A tightening, releasing. A sound that feels more felt than heard. A memory that surfaces with visceral clarity. Consider 3 common transmission textures and how to tend them. 1. Light tap. Sensation. A brief, electric tingle behind the sternum or at the third eye. How to tend: place a hand on the chest, breathe, and journal the first word that arrives. Meaning: often an invitation to pay attention, low intensity. 2. Slow unfold. Sensation: an inner image that gradually clarifies over hours or days. How to tend: notice, narrate, and take one small action that honors the image. Meaning: a trajectory suggestion from a possible future line. 3. Field pulse. Sensation: widespread, felt as a wave that reverberates through the day. How to tend: prioritize rest, grounding, and social connection until the pulse settles. Meaning: larger-scale recalibration that benefits from community containment. Type this exactly. I receive what harmonizes. I release what disorients. Use it if helpful. After repeating, shake the hands, press feet into the floor, and name a mundane task you will do in the next 10 minutes. A small re-entry anchor. 7. Your role. Now we become specific. The Arcturian strategy envisions people holding multiple complementary roles simultaneously. You may resonate with one or several of these aspects. They are practical, not mystical titles. They describe tasks that any committed person can practice. Below are 7 role aspects with daily, weekly, and monthly practices to embody each. 1. Stabilizer. Essence: maintain emotional equilibrium in the presence of intensity. Daily practice: 3-minute body scan upon waking. Weekly practice: a 40-minute solitude window for recalibration. Monthly practice: lead or host one short communal calming session. Embodiment tip: stabilize before trying to help others. Your equanimity is contagious. 2. Carrier. Essence: hold a frequency long enough for others to encounter it and practice with it. Daily practice: maintain a consistent morning reset. Weekly practice: carry one intention for a friend or community, offering a single discrete act of support. Monthly practice: offer a recorded 5-minute calibration to your circle. Embodiment tip: carrying is quiet work. It looks like showing up repeatedly. 3. Transmitter. Essence: articulate subtle impressions in simple language so others can use them. Daily practice: journal one sentence about a subtle impression and share it selectively. Weekly practice: practice translating felt sense into a short image or instruction. Monthly practice: lead a brief practice that externalizes a transmission into a useful ritual. Embodiment tip: clarity matters more than poetic flair. Make the transmission usable. 4. Catalyst. Essence: introduce appropriate perturbations that encourage growth without overwhelm. Daily practice: ask one curious question instead of offering advice. Weekly practice: gently propose an experiment to a friend or group. Monthly practice: host a reflective circle where people share micro-changes. Embodiment tip: catalysts spark but don't force. Their art is timing. 5. Bridge. Essence: connect timelines and help people meet their future selves through guided practices. Daily practice: write one instruction you imagine receiving from a future version of you. Weekly practice: hold a guided future me meditation for 5 participants. Monthly practice: compile 3 recurring future self messages into a short guide. Embodiment tip: bridges are humble. They point, they do not dictate. 6. Anchor. Essence: offer tactile, mundane references that help others ground after energetic work. Daily practice: remember and remark on small, ordinary details in conversations. Weekly practice: provide a physical touchpoint, a tea, a stone, an invitation to walk. Monthly practice: host a community meal or maintenance day. Embodiment tip: anchors make transcendence practical. 7. Steward. Essence: manage the ethical, interpersonal, and logistical aspects that keep a node safe. Daily practice: review boundaries before meetings. Weekly practice: check in with members about integration and consent. Monthly practice: update community agreements and safety protocols. Embodiment tip: Stewardship is unseen labor that sustains growth. You might notice that many of these roles overlap. A single person may serve multiple functions over the course of a day. The goal is not role perfection, but functional responsiveness. Are you able to choose the right stance for the moment? Daily practices to embody the roles. Below is a practical routine you can adapt. It is deliberately modular. Pick and choose what fits your life. Morning, 3 full breaths, a 1-sentence question to future self, stretch, and a short grounding phrase. Midday, 2-minute body scan, 1 small kindness to someone, drink water with intention. Afternoon, 5 minutes of focused attention on one task, note any inner nudges.
Evening, 10 minutes of reflective journaling titled, "What Did Today's Future Self Ask Me?" and a 1-line gratitude list. Type this exactly. I choose presence. I serve with ease. If you use it, press your fingertips together softly and breathe. Then stand and walk 5 steps, noticing the soles of your feet. Ethics and consent, a necessary chapter. Any system that involves subtle influence requires clear, repeated ethics. The Arcturian strategy is described here with an emphasis on consent, transparency, and accountability. If you practice with others, consider establishing agreements that cover 1. Voluntary participation. No covert transmissions. Group practices are shared in advance with clear opt-in language. People can leave at any time without penalty. 2. Honesty about limits. Practitioners declare they are not therapists, doctors, or guaranteed channels. Encourage professional referrals when needed. 3. Grounding and aftercare. Each practice includes grounding and a brief check-in for possibly intense responses. Provide contact resources for integration work if needed. 4. Mutual accountability. Circles appoint a steward or rotating steward to manage logistics and ethics. Disagreements are handled with transparent, respectful procedures. 5. Privacy and sharing. Personal inner experiences are shared only with consent and ideally anonymized if recorded or published. These protocols create a humane container. The aim is to expand conscious practice while minimizing harm. Q&A clarifications. Below are questions you might be thinking, stated plainly, followed by short answers. Question: will I be forced to become anything I don't want to be? A. No. Participation is always voluntary. Practices are optional tools for those who choose them. Sovereignty is emphasized at every step. Question: do Arcturians take control of my life? A. Descriptions here frame Arcturian involvement as supportive fieldwork rather than commandeering. You remain the final authority. Question: what if I feel disoriented after a practice? A. Ground immediately. Feet on the floor, water, movement, social contact. Seek human support. Stop any practice that causes prolonged distress. Question: is there proof this works? A. These are experiential models and subjective reports. The evidence offered is felt change and observable shifts in decision-making and relationships. Question: can I be a node alone? Yes. Nodes can be internal and solitary as well as communal. The key is steady practice and visible responsibility to others. Question: do I need special abilities? No. The practices are designed for ordinary people willing to cultivate steadiness and discernment. Type this exactly. I stay humane. I respect boundary. Use it as a bridge between practice and daily life. 8. The Mechanics of Transmission, a practical manual. Understanding how to move an inner impression into useful daily action is crucial. Below is a step-by-step mini-manual you can practice. It is designed for clarity and safe use. Step 1. Receive. Notice the initial impression without immediately acting. Label it sensation, image, word, tone. Practice. Hold for 5 breaths. Say nothing yet.
Step 2. Validate. Test simply. Does this impression ask for something now, later, or merely observation? Practice. Ask yourself one question. Is this for me to act on, to notice, or to release? Step 3. Translate. Convert the impression to a single, clear instruction or image. Practice. Write one sentence. Today, my impression says blank. Step 4. Commit to a micro-action. Choose a small, manageable step you can take within the next 24 hours. Practice. Choose an action that is observable and reversible. Step 5. Integrate and record. After the action, note the outcome and any residual sensations. Practice. Keep a brief log titled Transmission Notes with date and one outcome line. Example. You feel a quiet pull to contact an old friend. Receive. Notice the pull. Validate. Is it for now? Translate. Reach out with a single sentence. Microaction. Send a one-line message. Integrate. Note the tone of the reply and any emotional changes. Ethical check. Ensure the action respects the other person's boundaries and current context. Testimonials. Illustrative accounts. Anonymized. Below are several anonymized, clearly labeled personal accounts, describing subjective experiences. These are presented as individual testimonies, not as universal endorsements. Account A. R. Teacher. I began using midday check-ins. After 3 weeks, I noticed I reacted less to heated emails. It wasn't dramatic, just quieter. My students seemed calmer too. Account B. N. Artist. The future self prompts were odd at first. I would write something small, a reminder to show up, and later a door opened. Not because the universe sent it like magic, but because I had become quicker at acting on small opportunities. Account C. M. Nurse. I was nervous to join a microcircle. Over time, I learned to pace myself. I still work full shifts and see a therapist. The practices helped me come home to myself faster after difficult nights. Each account is subjective and specific to the person. Use them as illustrative, not prescriptive. Guided meditative sequence for node initiation, optional. This guided sequence is gentle, modular, and safe for most people. Please pause if anything feels destabilizing. If you are new to energetic work, have a trusted person nearby or keep a simple grounding ritual ready. Find a comfortable seat, feet on the floor, hands resting gently. Close or soften the eyes. Take 3 slow, even breaths. Imagine a small, steady light at your sternum. Breathe into that light for 5 breaths. Picture a thin thread descending from the sky into the crown, and a thicker root rising from the earth to meet it at your base. Feel the intersection. Invite a brief image of a future self who has practiced with gentleness. What do they wear? What small object do they carry? Notice without judging. Ask silently, what is one tiny action I can take in the next 24 hours that aligns with this presence? Breathe and listen. When a simple answer arrives, write it down. Offer a soft gratitude. Thank you for guidance when needed. Open the eyes, wiggle the fingers, and take a small sip of water. Safety reminder. If any imagery feels overwhelming, open your eyes and ground with movement. These practices are optional and intended to enhance steadiness, not replace care. 9. Scaling with integrity. How groups form and function. If you decide to deepen with others, the shape of a group matters. Here is a scalable, ethical model for node formation. Phase 1. Seed circle, 3 to 7 people. Purpose. Trial practices in a small, intimate setting. Structure. Weekly 30 to 45-minute sessions, rotating steward, simple agenda. Check-in, shared practice, brief integration. Duration. 3 months minimum to build trust. Phase 2. Support cluster, 8 to 25 people. Purpose, broader practice with more roles present. Structure, weekly micro-gatherings, one monthly longer integration. Stewards coordinate care, ethics, and referrals. Focus, training stabilizers, transmitters, and anchors. Phase 3, network of nodes, multiple clusters. Purpose, regional adjacency and cross-pollination. Structure, representatives from seed circles meet monthly to share learnings and safety updates. Outcome, reputation grows through visible, useful practices rather than secrecy. Guidelines for healthy growth. Grow by invitation, not by pressure. Keep membership voluntary and renewable. Prioritize local containment. People in close proximity should be prioritized for high-intensity work. Encourage members to maintain outside supports, therapists, medical professionals, family anchors. Member Circle, what deeper work looks like. Preview. For those who want sustained transmission, containment, and guided progression, a protected member circle offers structured offerings. Below is a clear outline of what such a circle may include, framed as support, not cure, and always grounded in consent and practical good sense. Core components. 1. Live stabilization sessions, weekly guided sequences focused on nervous system regulation. 2. Advanced calibration trainings, recorded modules teaching practical methods for intuitive discernment and timeline journaling. 3. Group integration calls, monthly small group calls where experiences are processed with a steward present. 4. Resource library, short practical guides and templates for running safe microcircles. 5. Peer support channel, moderated, optional text channel for brief check-ins and resource sharing. 6. Ethical toolkit, templates for consent forms, boundaries, aftercare protocols.
Member outcomes, what people report when they stay consistent. Increased access to steady attention. Clearer memory for subtle impressions. Practical templates to run safe local practices. A cohort for mutual support and accountability. Pricing and access are intentionally structured to cover stewardship costs and provide scholarships. This circle is curated to maintain a high standard of care and to protect members from exploitative dynamics. If you choose to explore this option, the invitation will clearly explain commitments, refunds, and safeguarding measures. A note on scarcity. Spaces may be limited to maintain safety and stewardship capacity. That is not pressure. That is stewardship. If you feel called, consider the commitment honestly. At this point, some of you may be asking for precise, repeatable anchors to use in conversation, in the field, and in private with your future self. Below are short, practical scripts. Practical anchors, repeatable lines. For grounding, feet on the earth, breath in the belly, I return. For receiving, I allow impressions, I choose what to act on. For consent, I request clarity, I receive with consent. For group check-ins, I am present, I hold my boundary. Type this exactly. I practice with care, I honor consent. After repeating, smile gently and stretch your arms to the side. 10. Advanced stabilization, routines for busy lives. For those who carry multiple responsibilities, here are condensed practices that fit even into hectic schedules. Micro-stabilizers, 1 to 5 minutes. 5 deep breaths with hands on the sternum. A 2-sentence journal entry, today I noticed, and 1 small action. A standing reset, press feet down, rise on toes, exhale. Nano-stabilizers, under 60 seconds. 3 inhales into the belly, slow exhale. Name 5 visible things in the room. Place both hands on the thighs and wiggle toes. Weekly essentials, 20 to 60 minutes. 1 longer breathwork session and a 5-minute integration journal. A short walk without phone, noticing 1 image for 3 minutes. A check-in call with a trusted person. Monthly maintenance. Review ethical agreements in your group. Update your personal boundary list.
what you will and will not do. Schedule a day of rest and non-practice. These routines are practical scaffolds. They keep you available. A final series of illustrative vignettes and their lessons. 1. The Librarian. Story. A librarian began a micro-practice of greeting patrons with a shared silence for 5 breaths. Over months, return borrowers reported feeling seen in a different way. The librarian's role as an anchor softened the library's atmosphere. Lesson: small, mundane acts can catalyze community-level shifts. 2. The Caretaker. Story. A caretaker who worked nights used a nightly journal entry to document future self nudges. Over time, she became quicker at choosing rest rather than overworking.
Her family noticed the change before she did. Lesson: micro-practices can protect caregivers from burnout. 3. The Baker. Story. A baker began hosting a weekly quiet dough hour where customers could sit and write for 10 minutes. A small community coalesced and later organized a neighborhood cleanup. Lesson: public rituals tied to ordinary work cultivate civic coherence. Each vignette is offered as illustration of how tiny, steady practices ripple outward. 11. Closing anchoring ritual. Optional and brief. As we arrive at the close, an anchoring ritual offers a way to synthesize what you've held. This is offered as a gentle practice. If anything feels off, skip it. If you choose to do it, allow 5 minutes. Sit or stand comfortably. Place your hands lightly over your heart. Breathe in for 4 counts, out for 6 counts, for 3 rounds. Visualize a soft membrane at the chest that sorts incoming impressions, keeping what is useful and returning what is not yours. Whisper to yourself, I open where it is safe, I close where I need rest. Bring your attention to 3 things in the room and, in your mind, name each. Stand and move gently. Type this exactly. I anchor. I choose with care. Breathe. If you feel any dizziness, ground. Feet, water, movement, someone nearby. 12. Final invitation. Are you ready to join them? We began with the question, are you ready to join them? The answer is not a binary gate. It is a continuum. Readiness shows itself in small choices. A 10-minute practice remembered, a boundary kept, a friend offered a stabilizing presence. If you felt alignment, the chest warm, the future self tug, a curiosity that won't leave you, and you would like coherent, structured support to deepen safely, there is a protected member circle that offers weekly stabilizations, advanced calibrations, and a cohort held by strict ethical covenants. The member circle is designed to be practical, grounded, and accountable. It is not about miracles promised or privileges conferred. It is about access to guided processes, peer containment, and stewarded transmissions so your work can be sustainable. What membership offers? Clear, concrete benefits. Weekly live stabilization sessions to help steady your nervous system. A short curriculum of recorded modules on calibration, ethical fieldwork, and timeline journaling. Monthly small group integration calls with rotating stewards for safety. Practical templates to host safe microcircles in your community. A modest library of guided sequences and printable anchors. Optional peer support channels that are moderated to maintain respectful communication. A scholarship model intended to enable access for those with financial need. If you choose to join, your participation is voluntary. You may pause or withdraw at any time. The circle maintains clear agreements about consent, boundaries, and referrals to professional care when appropriate. Spaces are intentionally limited to preserve containment and care. Type this exactly. I choose to deepen with care. If the phrase resonates, follow it with a simple action.
Open your calendar and mark one 20-minute slot in the next 7 days for a practice. A small commitment is more powerful than grand vows. Final practical reminders. Sovereignty first, you remain the final authority in your system. Safety second, prioritize grounding and professional support when needed. Stewardship third, tend to your role in small, repeatable acts. A closing image. Imagine a night sky where a few bright points begin to glow more steadily. They are not brighter than the rest, they are simply steadier. As they hold their light, nearby stars learn the pattern. Over time, constellations that had been dim become legible. This is the plan. Not to outshine others, but to hold a steady note so that pattern recognition can unfold. Are you ready to join them? If the question sparks a yes, a maybe, or a not now, that response is your data. Use it with kindness. Final CTA, conclusive invitation. If you feel called to steady support, guided transmissions, and a carefully stewarded cohort to practice with, consider joining the member circle. It offers the practical tools, live stabilizations, and ethical container that help people sustain this work without losing touch with ordinary life. If you decide to explore, the invitation will include transparent details about commitments, pricing, scholarships, and safeguarding policies. Participation is optional and reversible. Type this exactly. I request support. I hold my boundary. If you used that phrase, anchor it with a single small physical act. Press your palms together briefly, then relax them into your lap. Close with a breath. Remember to ground whenever needed. Whether you say yes or no to deeper entry, the practices here are offered as tools. Your life is your reference point. Hold the question, are you ready to join them, as a compass, and move only as your sovereignty and discernment guide you. This is disclosure delivered as orientation. You were positioned, you were asked. The rest is stewardship. If now is the moment for you to deepen, the circle is waiting with clear agreements and careful support. If now is not the moment, you remain supported by the simple practices you have learned here. Either way, keep your feet on the ground, your breath in the belly, and your choices held with kindness.